Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation of history's most interesting people. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these fascinating lives. Now, let's meet our guest. All right, let's get into it. My guest today is an absolute legend of the hardwood, a man whose name is synonymous with intensity and winning. For those who may somehow not know who you are you?
My name is Bobby Knight, though most folks just called me Coach or the General. I spent the better part of my life on a basketball court, most notably leading the Indiana Hoosiers for 29 years. I loved the game, but more than that, I loved the preparation and the discipline it took to win.
You certainly brought the fire, Coach. Let's go back to the beginning. When and where were you born?
I was born on October 25th, 1940, in a little town called Massillon, Ohio.
And was Bobby what was on the birth certificate, or did you have a different given name at birth?
My given name was Robert Montgomery Knight.
The General, Robert Montgomery Knight. Has a nice ring to it. Is there a story behind your birth name?
My parents, Pat and Hazel Knight, just liked the name. My father was a railroad man, and they were simple, hardworking people. I think they wanted a strong name for their son, and Montgomery was my mother's maiden name.
Massillon is a big football town. What was your hometown like growing up?
You hit the nail on the head. Growing up in Massillon, sports were everything. It was a tough, blue-collar town where people took a lot of pride in their work and their teams. If you weren't playing, you were watching. That environment definitely shaped my competitive nature early on.
Sounds like the perfect place for a future coach. What was your family life like?
It was very stable. My dad worked for the railroad, as I mentioned, and my mom was an elementary school teacher. They instilled in me the value of education and a hard day's work. We didn't have a lot of frills, but we had everything we needed, and there was always a huge emphasis on doing things the right way.
What kind of kid were you? Were you already drawing up plays in the dirt?
I was a very active kid, always outside with a ball of some kind. I was studious because of my mother, but I had a bit of a stubborn streak even back then. I wanted to win at everything. Marbles, cards, you name it.
Even the best have them. What were your biggest fears growing up?
I think my biggest fear was simply being unprepared. My father always told me that the will to win is not nearly as important as the will to prepare to win. I took that to heart. I was afraid of letting my teammates or my family down because I hadn't put in the work.
That's a powerful philosophy. What did you dream of becoming as a child?
Early on, I thought about being a professional baseball player. I loved baseball. But as I got taller and spent more time in the gym, basketball really took over. By the time I was in high school, I knew I wanted to stay involved in sports, likely through coaching or teaching.
What were some of your favorite activities in school?
Aside from sports, I actually really enjoyed history. I loved reading about great generals and leaders. I was also quite involved in my studies. I took them seriously because if I didn't get my schoolwork done, I wasn't allowed to play.
A classic rule. What was your first job?
My first real job was working as a caddy at a local golf course. It taught me a lot about patience, and believe it or not, I actually do have some. It also gave me a chance to observe how people handled frustration on the course.
Was there a moment where you realized you were different from everyone else?
I don't know if I'd say different, but I realized I had a different level of focus when it came to strategy. While other guys were just playing for fun, I was looking at why a certain play worked or why a defense broke down. I saw the game like a puzzle that needed solving.
What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
Deciding to go to Ohio State to play for Fred Taylor. I wasn't the star player, I was a sub on that 1960 championship team. But being around guys like Jerry Lucas and John Havlicek and learning under Coach Taylor was the foundation of everything I did later. It taught me what a championship culture looked like from the inside.
What was your biggest break?
Getting the head coaching job at Army when I was only 24 years old. They called me the kid coach. To be given that kind of responsibility at a place like West Point was a massive opportunity. It's where I really honed my general persona and learned how to lead in a disciplined, military-style environment.
What were your biggest struggles before success?
When I first started at Army, we didn't have the tallest or the most athletic players. We had to out-discipline and out-execute everyone. My struggle was learning how to get every ounce of potential out of players who weren't necessarily destined for the NBA.
You're famous for your intensity. Did you ever consider quitting?
Never, not once. I might have been frustrated, and I certainly had my moments where I was angry, but quitting isn't in my vocabulary. If you commit to something, you see it through to the end.
Were there any specific daily habits or routines that you feel are essential to your success?
Film study. I spent hours and hours watching film of our practices and our opponents. I also believed in a very rigid practice schedule. Everything was timed to the minute. Discipline in the small things leads to discipline in the big things.
What job would you have had if fame never happened?
I probably would have been a high school history teacher and a coach in a small town in Ohio. I would have been perfectly happy doing that. I loved the teaching aspect of coaching more than the quote-unquote fame part of it.
What was your life like before fame?
It was quiet. Life at West Point was very focused and insular. We worked hard, we coached hard, and we didn't have the media circus that followed me later at Indiana.
How did relationships change after success?
Success makes you a target, but it also creates a very tight-knit family with your players. My sons, the men I coached, are the relationships I cherish most. Some people outside the program didn't understand my methods, but the guys who played for me knew I loved them and wanted the best for them.
Did fame bring happiness?
Winning brought satisfaction. I wouldn't say fame brought happiness. Fame is often a distraction. Happiness for me was a perfectly executed motion offense and a team that played selfless defense.
What was the downside of becoming famous?
A lack of privacy, and the fact that every single outburst or mistake was magnified 1,000 times. People often focused on the chair throwing and missed the fact that we had one of the highest graduation rates in the country.
What misconceptions did people have about you?
That I was just an angry man. I was a perfectionist. I was demanding because I knew what those young men were capable of. I also did a lot of charity work and supported the libraries at Indiana, which most people never talked about.
What was your darkest moment?
Leaving Indiana in 2000 was very difficult. That school and those fans were my life for nearly 3 decades. It was a painful way to end such a long tenure, but I'm glad I got the chance to coach again at Texas Tech.
What past regrets did you carry that you spoke about?
I've said before that there were times I could have handled my temper better. I let my passion for the game get the best of me in ways that overshadowed the performance of my players, and I regret when the focus shifted away from them.
What's something people misunderstood about your life?
People thought I hated the media. I didn't hate the media. I just didn't like uninformed questions. I actually enjoyed a good intellectual conversation about the game with anyone who truly understood it.
Tell me about a time when everything went wrong and how did you handle it?
In the 1984 Olympics, there was so much pressure coaching that amateur team. We had internal struggles and massive expectations. I handled it by tightening the screws, increasing the discipline, and focusing entirely on the goal. We ended up winning the gold medal, so the everything went wrong part turned into everything went right.
Did fame and fortune change your life?
It allowed me to provide for my family and support causes I cared about, but it didn't change who I was. I still wore my plaid coats and sweaters, and I still preferred a simple meal and a good book to a fancy gala.
What personal battles were you fighting privately?
I think the biggest battle was just the constant internal pressure to maintain a standard of excellence. It's exhausting to try to be perfect every single day, and I put a lot of that weight on my own shoulders.
Who had the biggest influence on your life?
My mother and Fred Taylor. My mother taught me how to learn, and Coach Taylor taught me how to lead.
What was life like in your final years?
I spent a lot of time with my wife, Karen, and my family. I enjoyed getting back to Indiana and feeling the love from the fans again. It was a quieter time, a time for reflection and enjoying the legacy of the players I'd coached.
What were you working on in your career before you passed away?
After I retired from coaching, I did some broadcasting, which was a lot of fun, but mostly I was focused on my family and staying connected with my former players.
When and where did you pass away?
I passed away on November 1, 2023 in Bloomington, Indiana.
What happened?
I had been facing some health challenges for a few years, particularly with my memory and overall strength. My family was with me at the end, which was exactly how I wanted it.
What's a random fact about you most people have never heard?
I was a huge fan of hunting and fishing. It was my escape. If I wasn't in a gym, I wanted to be in a field or on a boat. It was the only place I could truly find some peace and quiet.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you?
Oh, there were so many. People used to say I had a secret room full of broken chairs. That gave me a good laugh. I only threw one chair, and it was to get my point across to the officials.
What was your most unique habit?
I used to keep a very detailed diary of every practice. I'd write down what worked, what didn't, and how individual players responded to different types of motivation. I had stacks of them.
What was your favorite food?
I loved a good steak. Nothing fancy, just a well-cooked piece of meat with some potatoes.
Did you have a favorite restaurant?
There's a place in Bloomington called Janko's Little Dubrovnik. Best steaks in town. I spent many nights there.
What was your favorite book?
Anything by Winston Churchill. I admired his leadership and his ability to communicate under immense pressure.
Did you have any known rivalries?
My biggest rivalry was with Gene Cady at Purdue. We went at it for years, but the secret was I had immense respect for Gene. We were two old school coaches who wanted to beat each other's brains out on the court, but we were friends off of it.
Tell us a story nobody talks about.
People talk about the anger, but they don't talk about the time I spent helping players with their personal lives, helping them find jobs years after they graduated, or being there when they lost a parent. Those are the stories that matter to me. I once paid for a former player's medical bills and told him never to tell a soul.
What's your funniest behind-the-scenes moment?
One time during a practice, I was screaming at a player for being out of position, and I accidentally tripped over a ball and did a full somersault. I jumped right back up and kept screaming like I intended to do it. The players were terrified to laugh, but I knew I looked ridiculous.
Did you ever prank someone?
I was more of a tough love guy than a prankster, but I did enjoy a good dry joke. I'd often give the assistant coaches a hard time just to see if they'd stand up for themselves.
What was the most outlandish purchase you made?
I'm not a flashy guy, but I did buy a really high-end shotgun once for hunting. It was a beautiful piece of equipment, and for a guy who didn't spend much on himself, that felt pretty outlandish.
What advice would you give people chasing success?
Focus on the preparation. Everyone wants to win, but very few people want to do what it takes to prepare to win. Discipline yourself so others don't have to. And finally, be honest with yourself about your weaknesses so you can fix them.
Coach, this has been an absolute honor. Do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before we sign off?
I just want to say that basketball was a vehicle for me to teach life lessons. I hope people remember the wins, sure, but I hope they also remember the importance of education and doing things the right way. Thank you for having me, Calvin. It's been a joy to talk about the game again.
Thank you, Coach Knight. We've spent today diving into the mind of a coaching titan, from his Ohio roots to the championship banners in Bloomington. We learned about the general behind the whistle, his passion for history, and his unwavering belief in preparation. And that wraps up another conversation from beyond the grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.